Devon Kennard has fulfilled the Arizona Cardinals' need on the opposite side of Chandler Jones on the edge to get after the quarterback. Kennard is the type of player that is a hybrid linebacker, edge player, and I think is actually a pretty interesting fit and a different kind of player that I really didn't expect the Cardinals to go after for this defensive scheme of Vance Joseph. Vance Joseph has had a little experience doing a bunch of different things defensively, and I'm really intrigued to see how this player fits within his defense. They did release Reddick, a former high draft pick, in the draft a couple of seasons ago. He hasn't really worked out at edge. He hasn't worked out at linebacker, so they've moved on. It's interesting to see how Kennard's going to replace rather him or add to that edge position. In Detroit, he's mostly been an edge player. He had 7 sacks the last 2 seasons. He's been productive. 14 quarterback hits in 2018, 15 quarterback hits this past season. He had 58 tackles, he had 2 fumble recoveries, and played all 16 games. Since coming to Detroit, he's really been a more productive player than when he was in New York, although I did like him in New York as well as the same type of edge / linebacker hybrid type of guy. He has put up pressures over the last 2 seasons. 30 in 2019, 25 in 2018, 13 hurries in both seasons, according to Pro Football Reference. And in terms of his snap count, he has played a lot. Last year, he played 88% of snaps for Detroit, which is too much. 82 last year. So that's part of the reason his sack numbers are up in Detroit. I mean, before 49%, 48%, 42%. Detroit released a guy that was playing 88% of the snaps for them, 82% of the snaps. That's pretty wild. That doesn't usually happen. That obviously means they weren't seeing enough production from him given the amount of snaps. And pressure-wise, I mean, it's there. It's just converting that into big plays that might have been the problem for the Lions. And the consistency with the pressure has been an issue for the Lions. Kennard isn't going to be a number 1 pass rusher for any team he plays on. For the Cardinals, he can be a number 2 or a number 3, and that's good. He can also play a little linebacker, which is great. But I think the main role he's going to play is play on that opposite side of Chandler Jones and just another guy that can get off the edge. He has speed. He's more of a smaller type of edge guy. He's 6'3", 256, more of the traditional outside linebacker edge. Kind of in a similar vein to Jones, but Jones is like long and big. Jones is like 6'5", like 260, but Jones is also like super athletic, which makes him special, right? Kennard's not that type of guy, but he adds a little bit of speed to the position, and I think the Cardinals ultimately want to build their defense on the speed and athleticism. So it's interesting. If Kennard's snaps go down, I think his production actually will rise. So I think that's what's going to happen in Arizona, and I'm intrigued to see what Detroit will actually end up doing to replace him. They brought in Jamie Collins, but I'm not exactly sure that that's a 1-for-1 switch. Collins can play inside or outside, but you would prefer for Detroit that he would play inside more often than not. So it's going to be interesting to see how Detroit replaces him. But for Arizona, they get a good, versatile edge defender that's been productive over the past couple of seasons and played a ton for the Detroit Lions. So Kennard to Arizona. He's going back home, and he took a pay cut to do so. Not only do the Arizona Cardinals now have another edge rusher in Devon Kennard, but they've also upgraded their linebacker position with a player that I feel was unique and stood out to me amongst a lot of the linebacking group within this free agency because he's a rare type of linebacker. I'm talking about Deandre Campbell, who was signed to just a 1-year prove-it deal in Arizona, but a player that I think is super undervalued across the NFL. I think he was an underrated player in his days in Atlanta, and I'm extremely intrigued to see how the Cardinals utilize him within their defense now that he's playing in a different scheme. He's leaving the Seattle scheme in Atlanta and he's going to Arizona to play more of an inside linebacker role and possibly even do a little bit more than he did in Atlanta. And what I really love about this guy is just his pure athletic profile. I mean, he's a big linebacker, yet he has great speed and sideline-to-sideline ability, and he's also great in coverage for the most part. Throughout his career, he's had his ups and downs as a young player in the NFL, but his athleticism allows him to be great in the run game and utilize his speed and his size to shed blockers and get after the running back. And his size and his length is also great in coverage because he can cover so much ground, but he has great speed. So Campbell is a very rare linebacker. You don't see a lot of these guys. I mean, 6'4", 232 pounds. I always liked him as part of the Atlanta Falcons. And over the seasons, especially with Deion Jones being hurt, banged up, past couple of years, Campbell has really stepped up into his place and played pretty well in that basically number one linebacker position. Campbell can basically do anything you want, and I'm really intrigued to see if the Cardinals utilize him more as a blitzer. Due to his size, I think he would make a great blitzer, and his speed-size combination, I feel like it's underutilized in that role. Like I said, 6'4", but he's an inside linebacker. That just doesn't happen. Maybe they even play him a little bit more on the edge, and that's why I'm intrigued to see in a more scheme-versatile defense that does a little bit more and is a little bit more creative than the Seattle scheme in Atlanta. I'm intrigued to see how this takes his game to the next level, if it does or if it hurts him. I really want to see how that happens. So 26 years old, going on 27, 2 sacks last season, which tied for a career high, 129 tackles, which was by far the best of his career, most tackles of his career. The only time he's been over 100. The closest was 94 in 2018, 92 in 2017, but 129 tackles. He was all over the place making plays in the run game. 6 tackles for loss, which was a career high. He also had 2 quarterback hits. When taking a look at his advanced stats, he allowed 3 touchdowns through the air, had 2 interceptions. This season, he allowed an 82% completion percentage. Season before, 69.8. So a high completion percentage. But when you look at it, I mean, he wasn't great in coverage this year, but I really feel like he has had moments where he's been better. And you have to remember that Campbell is in this zone scheme where it's not really like he's a man-on-man assignment. It's like you're matching a player or you're dropping back into a zone. So it's kind of hard. You kind of got to take those stats with a little bit of a grain of salt, especially at the linebacker position. But like I said, I just love his athleticism. He plays a ton of snaps. 91% in 2017, 83% in 2018, and 89% last season. That's over 900 snaps the last 3 seasons of his career in 3 of the first 4 seasons. And he's really been that number 2 to complement the number 1 of Deion Jones. I love his speed. I love the combination of his size and speed. And I think he'll bring an athlete to this linebacking core. And what I really notice with the Cardinals is they're just trying to add as many athletes as they possibly can in their front 7. And I love that about their game plan. So Kennard, edge rusher, linebacker Deandre Campbell, big time upgrades. And I'm very intrigued to see how they're utilized within this Cardinals defense.